emergence.
The typical seed form being, having that kind of beam, not perfectly spherical, but just sort of, slightly off. I mean, seeds come in all sorts of shapes and sizes, but that to me is focus as the seed shape. And I gave it that gnarly kind of hacked appearance on the surface, as many seeds have that kind of armoured coating to them, which I found just contrasted nicely with the other elements as well. So colour's something that's fairly new to me. I'm still really unconfident with colour, but I think if I keep it fairly simple in colour terms, then I'm sort of okay with it. So I went.
No, sure. Okay, because at this point, quite often when I got Joe Publix, there was some a little bit more. So we go from something quite sophisticated to something very, very simple. And there's an artist in Bristol, I think it is, called Jenny Elphick, and I wanted her in this exhibition. She makes nice big bold pieces. And I rang her and she said, Nick, I can't, I'm just too busy. Can't apply. She said, but I really think you ought to know about this guy called Tom Watson, who's working in the shed in the back of his garden. making really interesting stuff. So I got hold of Tom, would you like to apply? Yes, I would. And he sends me down photos of 3 pieces. But if you imagine this just standing up in a scrapyard, which is his back garden, and you just couldn't really see it in the photo. It didn't stand out at all. So I told him. And so he reacted and he went to a studio and had his pieces photographed. And so then this got selected. So basically you've just got 2 pieces of industrial steel and a piece of copper, and it's called Guarding the Precious. And it's his interpretation effectively of like a flower beginning to open up. So these are the outer petals, and that's the inside beginning to come through. But I think it's really lovely, even though it's very angular. And again, he hadn't exhibited much. He turned up with this piece with a slab of stone, expecting to stand it somewhere. But, you know, it's metal, it's supposed to be heavy. So we said, look, we can't, health and safety won't allow it. What are we going to do? And so Paul the gardener was here, and he went and got his chainsaw. This stump was at that time about that high. He just Coleman said I would quite like this area, and so Paul got his chainsaw, a couple of screws, cut the trunk off. We drilled a couple of holes, screwed it up, solid to rock, and it's been here for a whole show. So this is Talisman from the Talisman series by Luke Allen Buckley. He's our most organised sculptor. He's only been exhibiting for about 18 months. He has his own manager. So his application came in from his manager. All my communication had to be with his manager. He turns up here with 2 installers and his manager. They do all the installation. I'm working with a guy who was a Channel 4 producer. He's my videographer. And he came and videoed them doing the install and so on. And at the end, Luke said, I don't want any of my team in the video, any photographs, none of my team in it, just me. And he wants to be known as LAB. So when I'm promoting him or whatever, then it's not Luke Allen Buckley, it's LAB. With all that, and the fact that these are quite beautiful things, I think that he's going to do quite well. So, yeah, Luke Allen Buckley.
What kind of stone is it?
Oh, well, I was supposed to put that in and forgot. So it's called a glacial erratic, and apparently these were washed down in the Ice Age to the shores of southern Ireland. And this is what he mainly works with, and he's now relocated. So he was trained in St Mawes. James Shawcross, is it? I think somebody helped me on that. I don't know. But there's a sculptor down at St Mawes that he apprenticed to. That made him eligible to be in this. And but studios are cheaper in Southern Ireland, and the stone is there, so that's where he's working. So, and he's the nephew of Alexa Polizzi, who comes back. Just fine. And she hasn't visited yet, which is a good thing.
Do you know about his work?
I don't. The actual process. Not concept, the actual physicality is
Yeah, I don't. I've got a feeling that there's a video on YouTube.
Yeah.
I just came across the other day.
It looks like flint as well, doesn't it? Something very metamorphic.
Do you know what it reminds me of? There's that huge, enormous horse's head standing on its nose.
Oh, and yes, in
The
Hyde
first time I
Park.
saw it, I can't stop. I always see it.
Yeah,
every time
no, I
look
can
at
see it now.
Yeah. Not good with names.
So, this is Kate Lyons Miller, and she is from Holwell, which is near Whitcomb-in-the-Moor. And she lives in a barn conversion, and the pieces of granite came out of the ground near there. And her partner works in stone, so he made little bowl. Oh, look at that! Somebody's left a penny. So that left a little place for the bowls to stand. The bowls are a fairly standard ceramic clay, but then she's also used clay from the Tean Valley as the surface cover. I don't know what the right words are here. Yeah, but she also goes around Dartmoor picking up stones and manganese and stuff like that and bringing it back to her studio and grinding it right down almost to like a powder. and then she puts it on the wet clay, and then when she puts it into the kiln, it sort of changes its form, and that's the patterning that you've got on all the bowls. It's called Cupstones from her Earthstone series, and the informing thing about that was apparently on Dartmoor there are cups in the granite that have been created by the wind and water over thousands of years, and historically alms were left in some of these cups for the poor, and when there was plague and so on, vinegar was put in the cup with the money so that whoever came and took the money, the alms, they didn't get infected by the plague.
Maybe that's why there's a penny under them.
Yeah.
Maybe.
There's a penny under all of them.
But I don't know, I haven't looked yet. But there we go.
Got to now.
You've got to look now.
Yesterday I brought my mum to see these. No, not everyone.
It's only vinegar. Where's pandemic?
My mum wanted something nice to keep the neighbours from backing on her lawn. And so she came to look at these yesterday, and she loved them. And she's not good at making a decision. She said, I want to go home and think about it. And we'd also been and looked at some granite boulders elsewhere down in Sticklepath. And she rang this morning and said, you know, Nick, I'm worried that it'll keep them off the lawn, but they'll hit the bowls and break them. So she's going to go for the granite boulders. So this is called Pride by Ella Morris. I think she's our youngest exhibitor. I think she's 18 or 19, comes from Bristol. So this one arrived here in the back of her car, all wrapped up in polystyrene. And she is another one that came to me and said, look, Nick, I'm really not good enough to be exhibiting here. And I said, yes, you are. What she didn't know was when our 3 judges saw the photograph of this, all 3 of them immediately wanted it. And so basically what she's done is, we are the British Lions. And COVID has actually completely stuffed us, so this is the British Lions kind of stuff, really. And we all need to regenerate to get over it. And she's called the Lion Pride because it's the Lion King, and he will lead his pride and he'll regenerate the pride. And so it's a little bit of a contradiction, a little bit of humour. But I love your faces, and everybody's face is the same. As you come towards it, it makes you smile. But I find if I look at it for quite a while, it becomes a bit sinister. Maybe you don't, but there we go. Yeah.
Well, lions are, aren't they? They're carnivores. I mean,
Yeah. And this is concrete fondue. Not sure what that is, but that's what it's called. So, there we go, Pride. Okay, so this is Jan O'Highway from Totnes. Jan should have been here today, but she's doing something about sculpture and light and science, which is all quite interesting, but she's running late. So she's working on that at the moment. It's called Spring. And basically she imports what she refers to as very expensive glass. Does anybody know what it's called, the glass? But anyway, very expensive glass from the US. And she creates a sandwich of it. And so they're all different colours of glass made into a sandwich. And then she puts something that's like a pipe cleaner in between some of the slices. Then she puts it all in the kiln and bakes it, and that's why it all sort of fuses into this mix and rounded shape. Takes it out, pulls out the pipe cleaner, a little bit of round file to make the hole a little bit bigger, and that's how she then forms these leaves. So this is the story on this one. Bearing in mind this is the first time I've ever done any of this stuff. And so exhibition opens 10 o'clock, 1st of June. I'm back in the tea room making myself a coffee, and one of the volunteers comes in and says, Nick, somebody outside wants to buy something. He's like, buy something? I don't know how to do that. So anyway, we managed to get through the process. The treasurer just happened to be in the office doing some work, so he helped me through. So we actually sold this one, but whilst it was here somehow, and I've got to find where this one, it got damaged. One of the leaves is here. And so we agreed that she would make another that would come in here, and then this one would go off because it was going to be a wedding present. And we were in the process of getting ready the other. When she came with the other, we went to take this to pack it, and we realised that this leaf had gone. And somebody has clearly deliberately broken it because they're quite firm.
Oh.
Now that is the only damage we ever had here. So, but there we go, that's life. So another one has gone to the wedding couple, and we've sold an additional one as well from people seeing this. So I'm rather pleased for her. So, yeah.
Result.
Are you talking, Sue?
You're doing very well. Turn it into a
So, this is Standing Stones by Sue. And so, 2 points for this. One, Sue came and chose it because she wanted it to be in a tranquil place and people could just be here and regenerate themselves really by appreciating it. And the water does run down through there when the water's running. Don't think there's any today. But people have definitely been here, and I've seen people just sitting on the grass beside it, which is quite nice. It also attracts more birds droppings than anywhere else in the garden. So when I come with my bucket of water and a brush, this is my starting point. There's one here today, but we won't look at that. For me, this was really the beginning of my journey. I have known Sandy Brown up in North Devon for quite a long time. You know, remember I mentioned her at the bottom. And so I went up and had lunch with Sandy, and she said, look, Nick, I want you to see the work of some of the people that are working with me. And so I can't remember if it's Fiona's piece or your piece that came in first. I think yours piece first. As soon as I saw this, I thought, wow, we've got an exhibition, you know. If there's stuff like this hiding away in Devon, then we've got it. So that really put me on my journey. Sue, do you want to say a bit more about the piece?
Yes, I mean, they're very much very, for me, about power of regeneration and regeneration of the spirit, and for me, the creative spirit. And after the sort of COVID year, I was very sapped of my creative energy completely, and actually coming down to the gardens and exhibiting these in the gardens really enabled me to reconnect with that. And also, I come from a family of industrial production, and I'd lost connection with my making skills because I'd been in the corporate sector for 20-25 years. So being in this exhibition has had a very powerful impact on me personally as an artist, and also connecting with my making skills from childhood. And my work's inspired by industrial heritage, and there's a lot of history linked to the pieces, and I could talk for hours on it. But yeah, essentially they are about regenerating the spirit, but also it's about identity as well, and reconnecting, regenerating my identity as an artist. And I hope people can sit and reflect and take in the power of these, because they're reflecting the power of the gardens and helping you to connect really with yourself and who you are and what you're about.
What's the material?
It's clay, it's professional black stoneware clay, and quite a lot of people have asked me, said they look really heavy. They are very robust on their plinths, but they're hollow, they're not solid, so they can be moved around very easily.
It was quite a challenge, wasn't it, to install them securely?
Yes, I chose a slopey, unfortunately I chose a slope, so actually installing them, there's metal prongs which go down through the plinths and into the ground, and there's a base plate in the ground, so that all had to be dug out and the base plates had to be put in, and that was on a slope, so trying to get the base plates flat took a while, but we got there. And
the challenge we got here with the birch trees is that the roots are literally like an inch down, and so Gardener Paul does not like us severing the roots. So some of the pieces you'll see in amongst the trees, like the talisman stone over there, has 4 spikes on the bottom of the stand. Paul was happy with that, but to dig a hole wasn't acceptable, so that's why it's here a little bit away from the trees. Right, back up the hill. Who made these pieces came to walk around the garden before anybody else. And we came walking up there, and he looked here and he saw the way that the trees rose, and he just said, please may I be in that position, because he feels that the flow from his metal pieces and up into the trees was a really nice place for them to be sighted. So it's Christopher Chandler from Pentyre in Cornwall, and apparently this is what the stone looks like at the bottom of the cliffs at Pentyre in Cornwall. And in his opinion, that is about the world regenerating itself. These great spikes coming up out of the sea and out of the sand.
Pentyre, you keep Pentyre or
I think so.
Pentyre?
No, that's the only one I think, right? So I think it's there. Yes, because Wadebridge is where he's selling through. There's a bit more to this story. Come to it in a minute. So basically, you've got rusted steel, charred wood, and patinated copper. And he tells me that patination is done by mixing chemicals and applying them to the copper until you get the colour you want. And he had to do about 100 different solutions in order to get that colour. And I'm amazed, actually, it has stayed just that colour all the time. So it's called Maelstrom. And the interesting thing about Chris is, so he lives, as I say, at Pentyre. There's this gallery called Contemporary Circle at Wadebridge, and they're selling everything he can give them. And he works with old metal, rusty metal, so it isn't all spikes, it's all sorts of different shapes. But they're clearly a good gallery, and if any of you wanted to link into them, I think it might be worth having a chat. Yeah, Maelstrom, Chris Chandler. Haha, where's Ruth? So, are you talking?
No.
Why?
You've done such a grand job, I wouldn't like to...
Okay, this is Neo the bull. 5mm steel
Yes.
plate.
Yeah,
Okay,
and he weighs 38 stone.
right, and it's, now I'm not quite sure what the correct word is here. I was using the phrase it's made by Ruth, but actually I'm not sure if it is. It's definitely designed by Ruth.
Yeah.
Is it made by Jeff or?
Well,
No.
we had it cut out by a steel manufacturer to the design.
Yeah.
And Jeff and I bolted it together.
Brilliant, brilliant. Okay. So Ruth sent us these sort of maquettes of this, which was great. But the challenge was I don't think the maquettes had horns. And so we accepted this, and they turn up with it, and they start to assemble it, and they put the horns on, and I suddenly think health and safety. So this is where we sort of got a bit panicky about health and safety. And fortunately, one of the trustees knows a company called Avian Health and Safety, and she got in touch with them, and they said, look, we'll sponsor you, we'll give you all the health and safety advice that you need, and as long as you sort of talk about, like I've just mentioned them here now. And so that was that, and they looked at this and said, look, you just put a rope around it. And I don't know if any of you rang them. Various artists did ring them to say, look, I'm making this, what do you think? And they've been a really, really useful resource to us. But anyway, Neo the bull, and Ruth told me that he represents regeneration, one, because he's sort of standing strong and steadfastly in amongst the chaos of COVID. Two, he's there ready to regenerate his herd when the time is right. And she particularly asked me to point out the fact that he's quite angular and aggressive at the front, but he's actually got quite a nice curvy tail and bum. So, is that okay?
Yes, the feminine.
Feminine, that's the right.
And balance, yeah, which we all need to do within ourselves personally and society also, I think. He's wearing his third eye today, which Nick said, no, we don't want anything mythical. So he did have a large sphere crystal, which has been packed because I'm moving to Hale in 2 weeks. So I said, I want him to have his crystal. So Jeff found that somewhere, didn't you? So he's wearing that today, and also he did have 3 of these wind
Okay.
chime tails, but Nick was like, no, we've done wind chimes, we don't want the wind chimes. So I'm like, well, even if he's only wearing it for one day, he's wearing it.
Ruth,
so.
I tell you what, look, I'll let it stay here to the end of the show now. Is that it? Okay, witness, nice guy.
It's okay.
The problem I had was when I reached out to particularly younger artists, this place had been called the Mythic Garden, and they said very strongly that they didn't want to be associated with that name, and also there were comments about wind chimes and dingly-danglies and all this kind of stuff. And so Ruth was the only one that came forward with anything like this, and I thought, well, I don't want people to think that I haven't listened to them. And so I said no at the beginning, but there you go, it can stay. So this is Wild Chairs by Eamon Broderick, who is at Brighton Art School, and like Lorenzo that I mentioned earlier, he spends an awful lot of time down here on the moor camping with his buddies and hanging out at Exeter University. So I said, okay, you can apply. And basically what he wanted to do was sort of interpret chairs in a way that they were growing within the Arboretum. And his original intention was to get bark from here to coat the chairs, but because of COVID he couldn't. So he got it locally. Yeah, so they're a fairly standard chair, coated in bark. He's interesting. So the reason behind me doing all this stuff is that I think there is a need for more creativity. I know, I do all my best to change my job. There's a need for more creativity in business, commerce, public sector. And that does not come from MBA students. They're all about system and process. And he is one of the ones that, in my opinion, is creative, but actually would sit very nicely within industry or commerce. Really interesting sort of guy. So yeah, Eamon Broderick from Brighton. This is Vanishing Point, and it's by Ben Rowe, who works at the Royal Western Academy.
Yeah, I work at the Royal West of England Academy in Bristol. Yeah.
So, and obviously this is our biggest piece, and the idea is if you look down these tunnels, you're basically looking to a vanishing point. I've got a photograph here which actually sort of tends to show it better than looking down the real thing.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, Ben. But
I know the shot.
Yeah. Just tell us a bit more about the construction.
Yeah, so it's it all comes apart into pieces. So I've got my studio's very narrow but very long, so I'm always kind of limited, and I kind of build my work as big as I possibly can in the studio. So everything has to be flat packed. So yeah. But this piece actually first started off as a much smaller sculpture, which was probably about this sort of size, and the tubes were fully enclosed. And what I wanted people to look through it and the light to come in and refract and kind of reflect everything that was going on, but that wasn't happening. So when I scaled it up to this larger scale, I took the solid sides away, and actually it's now doing what I want it to do, is that all the lines are just constantly being reflected, and they're just ongoing. So there's that kind of idea of regeneration, that it just keeps going and going and going. But as you can see, what I've done is I've actually put aluminium within the structure to give that mirror finish, and it's the first time I've worked with that material. So it was an exciting piece, but it's a piece that I can see is going to give a springboard to the next works, and it's a further way of developing.
Great. A fascinating piece. I mean, I just have to admire his patience to make it. It's just quite incredible. One of the most interesting things, and it might be about to happen at the moment, I'm not sure, men like it. They go really closely. I don't know why, but it just is all the time. And I do actually have a photograph here, if any of you are interested, that kind of shows the vanishing point a little better. I think the photograph is perfect.
So are you informed much by sacred geometry then? Because I did the heptagram and so on.
No, but I have looked into it in the past.
Yeah, because it really references that to me anyway.
Yeah, I'm really interested in the tectonic solids, and it's been a reoccurring form within all of my work so far. That's 5 or 6 years.
Better from the distance looking down.
A friend of mine called Jesus Hart, and then he goes to Glastonbury and he makes it
No, they're all doing the same thing.
things.
Yeah, where you
Yeah.
basically got one flat shape and you tessellate that and it builds up. Yeah, that's it.
Decaying sculpture everywhere in the garden has been left over the years, and I insisted that everything was removed except the egg, because the kids love the egg. And the gardener, he says, if he needs to think, comes and sits in the egg. So I got up here with my paintbrush and tidied it up inside, and there it stays. And I'm not sure who made it, although I have an inquiry to be made. So this one was kind of a little bit of administrative error on my part. So all of you are emerging artists and probably haven't had a solo show yet. I think Jill Fanshawe Cato was the first application that I received, and she lived in Morton Hampstead, and I was a bit excited, so I put it in the pile to go through for selection, not realising that she's internationally renowned. And this is actually from a Gold Award winning garden at Chelsea in 2017 called Minarets. So so I'm kind of, I made a mistake. I'm not telling lies. And she's lovely. And she's not here today because she's in London with her husband, who is a Japanese journalist and is being given an MBE for his services to the Japanese community in England today or yesterday. So there we go. Jill Fanshawe Cato. And that has a rope because it goes like this. And we were worried that if somebody grabbed it, we'd have a rather heavy flying ceramic bird, which was a bit of a risk. Okay. Are you students of hers or assistants or what?
I'm Sandy's assistant, and Sandy also runs a tutor group, so other members are mentored by Sandy.
And Melanie?
Yes, Melanie's part of the tutor group.
Okay. So Sandy Brown again, up in North Devon. Melanie O'Hanlon, part of her tutor group. This is called Unity Consciousness, and this is about how all the peoples in the world need to come together to regenerate after COVID. And it's been such fun watching this, because people look at that and their line then is generally to walk across the top, and they get to just beyond where Ruth is and they realise there's something out of their right eye and they're not quite sure what. They turn and they look at this, and then they come forward more or less to where Sue is to examine it a bit more, and they come right in. What are these dots and all this kind of stuff? And it happens all the time. It's quite sweet to watch. But Unity Consciousness, Melanie O'Hanlon. We only have 5 to go. Yeah. This piece has proved incredibly popular with artists. There's something about it, I don't know. It's called Abanos. It's by Leon Harmon, who's a chap from Buckfastleigh. I think he came out of Plymouth a couple of years ago. Not very well off at all. Finds it really difficult to get materials. So somebody cut down a dieback ash just down the road from him, and he asked if he could have it. I think it was the Highways Agency. And the branches were about this big. So he took them home and he split them down into these size pieces. He then went and left them in the river so that he could bring them back and bend them a bit. He then charred them. He then went off to the woods and grabbed as much birch bark as he could, which he boiled up, and then he discarded the bark and he boiled it down into a tar, and he covered each piece with the birch tar so that there was no longer any risk of it sort of polluting here at all. And basically what his interpretation of regeneration is, this is do you remember those houses that get found in boglands when they lift peat or whatever? I guess they were all covered in grass originally when they were used however many thousands of years ago. This is his interpretation of regenerating one of those. It's called Abanos. I kind of get a feeling, because it is so well liked by so many arts people, that we're probably going to see more of him. So, interesting piece. She lives on the outskirts of London, but her family are all over in Axminster, and she is a ceramic storyteller. So basically you go and tell her your story and she'll make ceramics about it. And so this is Katie's 3-year-old daughter. This is Katie, and this is her 7-year-old daughter. And what I don't know is what all the individual pieces mean. I've been told, but I just can't remember it all. But what was lovely, when she was here installing it, she had her 3-year-old daughter in her backpack, and her 7-year-old daughter sitting in the raised tailgate of the car. And my video guy was here videoing. It was really quite sweet. And it's called Totems. Totems by Katie Netley. Now these things, we haven't just left CDs lying around. We're part of an experiment to get rid of a thing called honey fungus, which can destroy trees in an arboretum. So who knows, where is he? Is he gone? Yeah. Yeah, so it's bags of stuff, and I releases something into the soil that should deal with honey fungus.
So yeah, life's difficult at points, isn't it? And in 2015, this is actually the second one I made of this. And in 2015, my partner died, and I was having a bit of a difficult time really. And then I nearly lost my hand in the workshop because I've got quite big industrial kit, and I didn't have my wherewithal, and I literally nearly lost this hand, and I'm lucky to even have it. And I not only have it, but it's good and strong, and I basically regenerated myself from a very difficult point in my life. And this is me being better, and this is called Song to the Creator. So it's autobiographical. Yeah, so that's the story of this piece. Yeah.
How did you make the middle?
Okay, so the
You talk us through it.
these are flat sheet, which I've formed cold because I need to hold them. I form these under hydraulic press with various tools, and I go in, I turn it over, I clean the surface over with tools again, and slowly work my way forwards. And I have to put it in the furnace to anneal it because it gets tight. And you can see the evidence of the working process on the texture. This is as it was. I haven't added that. That happens.
It's organic.
I'm allowing the process, broader than I'm putting energy into, I allow the process to also leave an imprint. So that's how these are formed. This is sheet again. That goes through the same process, but obviously I've abraded and polished over. And then this is formed from what's it? It's 63.5 mil, basically. I was going to say it in inches. It's 63.5 mil. So this starts off as solid stainless bar, and I forge it out. It's hot forged under the power hammer. And then these bronze leaves. In England, we've got. You can't buy large diameter bronze. I can't source any. I don't think it's here in England. So I had to cast the large sausages, round section, round bar of bronze to then forge out into this shape. And again, if you look at the texture, the process to spread and shape with the tooling leaves the imprints. So again, they're honest marks, they're not contrived, I haven't added them. So I've allowed Mother Nature to leave her imprint as well to get to the end result.
Thank you.
Yes, it's good.
There's a slightly interesting story as well. So we don't allow machinery onto the grass or into the arboretum at all. It can come up the track and that's it. So Andy gets in touch and says, look, it's all assembled, Mick. It's on this sort of 1-ton wooden block and it's 72 inches high. So I speak to the gardener and it's like, oh, what are we going to do? So we get hold of a local farmer who's got a telehandler on his tractor. And we've got some big industrial rubber mats, so we put them here. So we came, and he was wonderful. He came ever so carefully up the drive, turned in here, brought it in here, dropped it just there, and not long after he'd put it down, Andy was stood here and a shard of light came through and just caught it, and it was really lovely. It's an amazing piece, but yeah, I just wish we could sell it for you, Andy. I've been trying.
That's okay. If it sells, it does. If it doesn't,
Yeah.
that's fine. I'll get more mileage out of it.
We've had great reception. I'll go on because time's going on now. So this is another Ben Rowe piece, believe it or not. You may see the similarity. It's called Zephyr, and it represents an explosion of the chemical geosmin,
Geosmin, yeah.
which is the smell that you get from decaying matter after rain.
Yeah, that's it, yeah. Particularly kind of like in forest and wood areas, particularly when it hasn't rained for a while and you go in and there's that kind of really gorgeous organic smell. So for this, I was really keen that it was kind of in this kind of like gladed area, and you'd already kind of pre-marked it, hadn't you?
Well, Ben had spoken to me and said, "Nick, have you got a grotto?"
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, I haven't really got a grotto, but and at the time this had no leaves and stuff. But I said, look, I think when the leaves come and the ferns come up a bit, this is kind of." So when he got it, he thought, "Oh, this is great."
Yeah,
and of course now it's filled in.
Perfect.
Yeah. And I've left the leaves in muck on it because I thought that was probably what he wanted, and he's agreed
That
to it.
idea. Coming up.
So yeah. Again, Ben, I just think you're amazing to make this stuff. Sorry, so this is Crystal Patel. She's resident in London but spends an awful lot of time down here and around and up on the moor and so on, so I decided that she was eligible to apply. This is called Paradise, and in her original thinking the idea was that it was about decay and regeneration. So this was a great big four-legged structure that had decayed and fallen over and only had two legs left. But she said that in the making it became the skeleton of a whale on the bottom of the sea for her. And so then the rope work represents the stuff that begins to form on the skeleton of a whale in the bottom of the sea, and therefore represents regeneration. So the interesting thing about Crystal is she has this year been selected as one of the Bloomberg New Contemporaries 2022. Those are kind of the Bloomberg, I don't know who they use, but anyway, Bloomberg sort of identify emerging significant contemporary artists. So yeah, Paradise by Crystal Patel. And she wanted me to leave all the weeds. I haven't been lazy. She said please. But I do pull a few every now and again. Okay, and to the final one. In Cornwall, and the piece is called False Start, and he said as soon as he saw the call he envisioned that this is what he wanted to do in the context of COVID and so on. So this is one plant, if you like, a flower, which has got away and it's doing fine, and then these two are false starts, so representing all the sort of false starts that we were having at the time when he was building this because of COVID and so on. Again, a slight representation of a young artist, I suppose. He and I put this in as a triangular frame, and it's got a couple of poles here, and the idea is that these should move quite a lot, but the spring he's put in is a bit too strong, so we don't have the movement in it. So, but it's just, I still think it just works. It's lovely. So yeah, and now he desperate to work in the sculptural world, so I let him. Everybody else installed in May. I let him install in April because he hadn't worked for a year, and he's working in a sculpture park in Belgium. So, yeah. So that, folks, is what everybody comes to see. And I guess, I don't know how many of those I've done now, a couple hundred, I suppose. So we've had a good, steady footfall, but never crowds. It's just been quite pleasant, really. So thank you all for coming today.
Thank you.
No, thank you, yeah.
I hope you enjoyed meeting each other. I have got one judge for next year so far. I have two others in mind who I'm fairly sure that will say yes. I've raised the money for the Ashburner Prize, so it will be happening again. And so unless you've been successful enough to have a solo show, then you can apply next year as well if you want. So,
Any theme on next year? Have you thought of it yet?
not yet. What I'm doing, I'm going to get the judges, and I'm going to say to the judges, what shall we have as a theme? So that they've got some ownership.
To be announced.